So I'm sitting at school the other day. It's Monday, first period English class. I'm feeling tired, and it just so happens to be Valentine's Day as well. Then the teacher is reviewing characterization on a PowerPoint. Then as she's swiping through the slides, I'm still half asleep. Then she stops on this one slide, and I see this image. Then I sit up, and I'm like, is that Mike's new car? Then as she starts playing it, making us write down characterization of Mike Wazowski, I'm like, wow, I didn't think I would be analyzing Mike Wazowski today, but here we are. Then there's the part where Mike gets stuck in the hood of the car, and the teacher's cracking up. I'm in the back of the room, trying not to laugh. Then the rest of the class, with their bad sense of humor, just sits there like, I don't care how old you are, this is comedy gold. Then we watch Jack Attack and Jerry's Game, and I'm like, can this Monday get any better? I get to just sit and watch Pixar shorts in English class. Then it got me thinking, do the Pixar shorts fit into the Pixar Theory? So being the nerd I am, I go home and start watching the Pixar shorts to make this video. Now, I own all 3 volume DVDs because I used to be really big into these when I was like 7 years old. So I take these dusty things out, and yes, I know I could just watch them on Disney+. But if you like watching them the cool way, you gotta have these. Plus, they have exclusive commentary from the directors. So now, back to my question. Do these fit into the Pixar Theory? And I'm proud to say I've come up with a good explanation for every single one. These aren't just cheesy explanations. These are high-quality theories that fit in perfectly and even add to the Pixar Theory. And just to get this out of the way, any short that's tied to a pre-existing movie can obviously easily fit in since they take place shortly before or after their respective movies. So that includes Mater and the Ghostlight, Jack Attack, and any of the Toy Story or Cars tunes and anything of that sorts. I'm going to be starting off with the ones that are easy to fit into the timeline and then working my way to the harder ones. Now with that out of the way, let's get into the first short film on my list, which is Jerry's Game. This one's pretty easy. We even see this guy in Toy Story 2 as the cleaner, which proves he's in the same universe. And next we have Luxo Jr. As we know, human emotions can bring inanimate objects to life, and as we see in Toy Story 4 with Forky, the line between what's considered a toy and what's not is pretty unclear. The same can be said for Red's Dream, where you see a unicycle come to life, except doesn't that kind of go against the point? Since the whole short film is about him being forgotten and neglected. This probably means his life is about to die out soon since there's no one there to love him, which is why the ending is so sad. Then we have Knick Knack, which is the same idea, except this one can very easily fit in since every character in this could easily be considered a toy. Then there's Tin Toy, which again is about toys coming to life. I wonder if they intended for this to tie into Toy Story way back in 1995 since this short film was included in the home video release of the film. Now on to One Man Band. I don't think I even need to explain this one. It takes place in 1700s Russia and overall it's pretty inconsequential. Then Piper. Another one that doesn't matter in the long run. All it says is that some birds existed at some point in time. Sanjay's super team doesn't matter either, since everything that goes on is happening in his head. Now I'm getting to the ones that require a little bit of thought, but still work. This is where the video gets interesting. So let's start with Andrè and Wally B. So this one technically wasn't made by Pixar. It was made by John Lasseter working in the animation department at Lucasfilm. But since he became the chief creative officer at Pixar, it's counted as a Pixar short. Just thought I would add that little fun fact. So you're probably thinking, there's no way this fits in, right? Well, it actually does. It fits in perfectly, actually. As you know, when the humans returned to Earth and Wally, a mass evolution took place between both humans and animals. And as we know, the radiation caused humans to develop into monsters. So I believe that Andrè is a product of evolution. Since Monsters Inc. is so far in the future, I would say that this is somewhere in between A Bug's Life and Monsters Inc. The humans haven't quite evolved into what we see in Monsters Inc., but they're more evolved than the humans we see in Wall-E. So I believe this is sort of a middle ground. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, why does Wall-E B look like that? That doesn't look like other insects we've seen. And that leads me into the next short film, For the Birds. This one is the same idea in that the other birds we've seen don't look like that. But as we know, in A Bug's Life, the ants don't look like normal ants. So just like the ants evolved into quote-unquote mutant ants in this large frame of time, which is the case with the birds and insects in both For the Birds and Andrè and Wally B. The animals have evolved to become more intelligent and more dangerous. Take a look at what this bee does to Andrè. That looks pretty deadly to me. And in For the Birds are smart enough to cover themselves up when their feathers fly off. Further backing up this theory, we see these mutant birds briefly in Cars. By this point, the humans were still in space, so the birds were most likely more developed before the humans even made their return. So this could really take place anywhere in between Cars to Monsters Inc. But going off the fact that we see the telephone poles the way they are, I would say this probably takes place in between Cars and Wall-E. Now with that long segment out of the way, let's get into the next short film, which is Presto. In this short, we see the use of magic, which isn't something new to the Pixar universe, but the way he got this magic is the real question. Now, I can get into a whole other video discussing possible theories to why he may have gotten this magic, but the fact of the matter is that he does have it. And the other thing that I should point out is that this rabbit seems to be more intelligent than most animals, so I would probably say this fits in right about the time of Ratatouille. Next, we have an interesting one, day and night. Now, you might be wondering how I'm going to explain away this one. It just seems so wacky and out of the ordinary. Like, where even are they? Hear me out. I would explain this short film as being the creation of the universe. And when the sun and moon meet and switch with each other, this is the creation of the Pixar universe. This is the first sunset, or sunrise, depending on how you want to look at it. Now, you probably have one more question, though. Why do we see humans through the view of their bodies? As we hear Merida say in Brave,
there are those who say fate is something beyond our command, that destiny is not our own. Our fate lives within us.
Our fate is written out, but in a way is still yet to be written. From the beginning, the humans were always destined to rise up, trash the planet, and retreat into space. The machines would take our place, and we would eventually return, develop into monsters, and use humans as a power source. It was just a story yet to be written. Now let's move onward to Lifted. See what I did there? So as we know, thanks to Onward, life does exist on other planets in the Pixar universe. So I don't think that it's that unlikely that some alien race from a planet separate from the Onward planet could have visited the Earth at some point in time. And like Presto, I think a lot more theories can be made on this one. And side note, is that Linguini from Ratatouille? It does look like him, right? And this actually played before Ratatouille in theaters, so you never know. Okay, moving on. Lou. Now this one, we see toys come to life again, which means they probably get a lot of attention from the children at the school. Except, don't toys kind of have a secret code that they don't come to life in front of people? But as we see in the first Toy Story movie, Woody comes to life in front of Sid. I guess it's only when they're trying to teach kids a lesson. And no one else was around to see it but him. And by the way, this is the kid from Riley's class, so this was probably when he was a little bit younger. And Bow, which I talked about how much I liked this one in my other video. This one is simply the same idea of giving love and attention to an inanimate object and bringing it to life. This lady must have really cared about her dumplings, like really care about them, to the point where she'll eat them to stop them from going out on a date. That's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Except she wakes up and we find that she was dreaming anyway, so this short film doesn't really matter. Now, this is where it gets complicated. These are the short films that cause problems. But don't worry, I still have an explanation for them. These next 4 short films are Boundin', La Luna, Lava, and Partly Cloudy, each of which deserve their own video explaining. Let's start with the easiest to explain, which is not easy at all, which is Boundin'. What's the problem with Boundin'? It's just talking animals, that's nothing new. But no, this rabbit walks in like he's Jesus Christ and just opens up the doorways to heaven. Like, what is that? He just stopped the rain and made the sunshine shine through. What? The only real explanation is that the god of the Pixar universe is a literal rabbit. Just kidding, I have a better explanation than that. Another problem that arises is how advanced the animals are. I don't mean advanced in the sense that they're smart, I mean that they're able to jump 10 feet in the air like it's nothing. But wait a second, they don't say rabbit, they say jackalope. So I did some research into what a jackalope is, and by research I mean I googled it. It turns out a jackalope isn't a real animal, it's actually a mythical creature of American folklore. The idea of a jackalope is if you take a jackrabbit and a deer and put the two together, you get a jackalope. So I could just say that this is just a campfire story and not real in the timeline, but that would be cheesy. So let me try to explain this. This could take place in one of 2 time periods. This either takes place after Wall-E, but before Andrè and Wally B, or in between Brave and The Incredibles. Let me explain the first one. It could take place during this point in time because of the mass evolution that took place after Wall-E that I mentioned earlier. This could also take place in between Brave and The Incredibles because of the automobile that we see here. I think that this is the more likely of the two, because I don't think that in a society where we were advanced enough to send the entire population to live in space, we would still be using a little wagon-looking thing that we see here. Also, we see a human arm right here, so obviously the humans haven't evolved into monsters yet. So I believe this takes place during the westward expansion period of American history. And as for the animals, we do see advanced animals shortly after that time period in Finding Nemo and Ratatouille. And as for the jackalope himself, he could have found a way to harness magic in the same way that the magician in Presto did. As to how he did that, that could be its whole own video, but that's besides the point. Now, I have one more possible theory as to how this could fit in. If you remember, back in Toy Story 2, we see these critters in the Woody's Roundup TV show. A possible theory is that this short film takes place inside of the Woody's Roundup TV show. These are pretty much identical. Let me know in the comments which theory you like better. If you like clean and simple explanations, go with the second one. If you like it to be more complicated, then go with theory 1. I personally like the Woody's Roundup theory better. Okay, now we come to one which is really hard to explain. A volcano coming to life and singing? No way I can explain this, right? We see a volcano in The Incredibles and it doesn't sing, but wait a minute. How do non-living things come to life in the Pixar universe? From the power of the 0-point energy. And where, out of any place, would the most 0-point energy be located? That's right, in Syndrome's base. So you're probably thinking, these two volcanoes don't look the same at all. But remember, this takes place over a period of at least hundreds of thousands of years, which means that the rest of the island may have receded too. This is also how the female volcano came to life as well, since it was in the vicinity. But during the events of The Incredibles, she's underwater, which is why she's nowhere to be seen in the film. This one ties into the next short film, which is The Blue Umbrella. The city that this one takes place in may be Metroville from The Incredibles, which would explain why the 0-point caused many things in the city to come to life. But how do the humans not see that the umbrellas have a face? In this shot here, it seems that their face went away, so they probably have a code to follow so that humans don't find out, just like the toys in Toy Story.
Andy's coming, everybody! Back to your places, hurry!
The next hard one is La Luna. There was a YouTuber who explained how this is Alberto from Luca, and her reasons for it are so convincing that I'll just state it as a fact. So if you want to know why it's Alberto, go watch that video. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to assume that you know why. So in Luca, Alberto says he's touched the moon before.
Yeah, and the big fish protects them. I touched it once. I don't know, it felt like a fish.
Except we know that the moon doesn't look like that. We see it right here in Wally. So I think it's possible that he went on a boat trip with his father, and this was some sort of vision he had. Or something along the lines of that. If this wasn't Alberto, this could take place on another planet with a different moon. But I think the Alberto theory works just fine. And now, this is the hardest one to fit in. Partly cloudy. So I've spent days losing sleep over this and trying to figure out how does this fit in, since we know that every living creature isn't created by a cloud and delivered by a stork. In Inside Out, we see Riley moments after she was born. I can't imagine the stork dropping her off and then her mom and dad are just like, thanks for the baby, and then this scene happens. So just as I was about to give up, I was sitting in school and it hit me. Out of any character, who wanted to have a baby so bad but wasn't able to? Carl and Ellie from Up. This could be a scenario taking place inside of her head. Just like in the movie Up, the clouds turn into the shape of babies. And to further prove that this takes place inside of her head, the way that the cloud cries is exactly like Sadness from Inside Out. This could be a scenario created in her head. Just like we see in Inside Out, they have a whole movie studio inside of Riley's head that sets up dreams. And her dreams would be tailored to her personality, just like Ellie's represent hers. And as for the Spark shorts, they just don't work. That's why they're separate from the actual shorts. As for Pixar Popcorn, that works just fine. So I hope you enjoyed my explanations, and if you'd like to check out my other video about why people are wrong about turning red, click here. But anyway, for now, I'll just say bye.